Nicolas Cage spoke with anger, his voice a jagged blade slicing through the air of the studio, each word dripping with venom as he leaned forward, eyes blazing like a wildfire, ready to consume everything in its path. The audience gasped, a collective intake of breath that seemed to suck the oxygen from the room, leaving only the raw electricity of conflict. The host, perched behind a polished desk, smirked, lips curling like a snake coiling for a strike. "Oh, Nicholas," came the mocking tone, dripping with the kind of smugness that could make a saint lose patience. "Just upset because the last movie flopped harder than a fish on dry land." The crowd tittered nervously, unsure whether to laugh or brace for impact. Nicholas's fists clenched, knuckles whitening as he stood, chair scraping the floor like a warning shot, thinking this clever, sitting safe behind a little desk and tearing people down for laughs. His voice rose, a thunderclap of righteous fury, each syllable a hammer striking the anvil of his rage. This wasn't just a talk show spat. This was a reckoning, a collision of two forces. One, a man defending his life's work. The other, thriving on cutting others to size. The argument's roots ran deep, planted months earlier when the host, on a late-night monologue, had ridiculed Nicholas's recent film. A passion project about a retiring boxer chasing one last fight. Nicholas had poured his soul into the role, training for months, even breaking a rib during a scene, only for it to be called a tired retread of Rakia, cheap grab for Oscars. The jab had stung, not just for its cruelty, because it came from a man once respected, someone he'd shared laughs with over drinks years ago. Now, sitting across, Nicholas felt betrayed, like a soldier ambushed by a supposed ally. The host, sensing blood, leaned forward, eyes glinting with malice. "Come on, Nick. Thought that movie was good? What was it?" Another attempt at a comeback. The audience laughed louder this time, egged on by the taunting cadence. Nicholas's jaw tightened, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "This doesn't capture what it takes." Night after night, poking fun at people who actually create something, who put their heart into their work, feeding off other people's dreams. The tension thickened, a storm cloud ready to burst. The host, unfazed, waved a hand dismissively as if swatting away a fly. "Dreams. Please, spare the melodrama. Acting, not poetry. Stick to what works, like yelling about bees." The reference to an old viral clip hit like a sucker punch, and the audience roared, their laughter a cruel chorus. Nicholas's face flushed, not with embarrassment, but with a fury that seemed to radiate from his core. He stepped closer to the desk, his presence looming, a titan ready to topple a giant. "Thinking untouchable, huh?" he said, voice low, each word deliberate, like a prosecutor laying out a case. "Mocking me, mocking my work, expecting it to be endured. Battles fought harder than will ever be known, clawing through the industry. Through critics sharper than this, through failures that would have broken lesser men. And all that's met with a microphone and a bad haircut." The host's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, a crack in the armor, but recovered quickly, leaning back with a theatrical sigh. So intense. Maybe if that energy went into picking better scripts, this conversation wouldn't exist. The audience laughed again, but it was uneasy now, sensing the line had been crossed. Nicholas's eyes narrowed, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "Want to talk about choices? Let's talk about avoiding real questions, hiding behind jokes because real words are too risky." The crowd hushed, the air heavy with anticipation. Nicholas leaned in, voice a controlled burn. "Came here to talk about work, about art, but all that matters here is tearing it down, not hosting, bullying." The word hung in the air, sharp and final, as the audience held its breath, waiting for the next move. The studio fell into a brittle silence. Nicholas's accusation of bullying still echoed like a gunshot. The host's face twitched, the usual polished charm cracking under the weight of the word. Leaning forward, elbows on the desk, fingers steepled as if trying to reclaim control. The host said, sharp as a knife slicing through the tension, "A bully. That's rich, coming from a guy who's made a career out of chewing scenery. Want real, Nicholas? Here's real." The movie flopped because the same tired roles keep being picked. The audience doesn't want another over-the-top meltdown. They're bored. Nicholas's eyes flashed, but he didn't interrupt, letting the host dig deeper. Emboldened by the crowd's uneasy murmurs, the host pressed on. A one-trick pony, always has been, always will be. Nicholas took a step back, not in retreat, but like a boxer sizing up an opponent. His voice, when he spoke, was steady, a low rumble carrying the weight of years spent fighting for respect. Think the career in life can be summed up in a soundbite. He paced slightly, each step a counterpoint to the host's smug stillness. Risks were taken that few would dare. Heroes, villains, broken men, dreamers were portrayed. Awards won, fortunes lost, and yet still moving forward. And the other side, playing the same role every night, the one who thinks being smarter than everyone else is enough. The audience shifted, some nodding, drawn to Nicholas's raw honesty. The host's smile tightened, eyes narrowing as the crowd's mood shifted. Deflecting came the sharp retort, voice rising, desperation creeping in. This isn't about the host. It's about refusing to admit being past prime. The words were meant to wound, and they did. But Nicholas absorbed them like a seasoned fighter. He stopped pacing, turning to face the host directly, gaze unyielding. "Past prime," he said, slow and deliberate, each word a stone dropped into still water. "Still here, still making films, still telling stories, still fighting for what matters. Can the same be said on the other side? Or is it just night after night, tearing down anyone daring to try?" The crowd murmured a ripple of support for Nicholas, standing tall, presence commanding the room. The host, sensing the shift, slammed a hand on the desk, the sound sharp enough to make the front row flinch. "Don't lecture about trying," came the spat, composure unraveling. "This desk, this audience, built from nothing. Think it's possible to play the victim? Not special, just another washed-up star, unable to handle the truth." The venom in the words was palpable, but Nicholas didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled, a slow, dangerous curve of the lips that sent a chill through the room. "The truth," he said, voice soft but cutting. "The truth is, fear runs deep. Fear of anyone who dares to be more than a punchline. Fear of someone still willing to create, to fail, to persist. That's why the attacks come, because this is a reminder of what will never be." The audience erupted in applause, a wave of support that caught the host off guard. Face flushed, hands gripping the desk, struggling to regain control. Delusional came the attempt at a comeback, but the bite was gone, replaced with the petulance that betrayed vulnerability. Nicholas stepped closer, voice dropping to a near whisper, yet carrying to the back of the room. "Delusional? Perhaps, but better that than cowardice hidden behind cheap shots." The crowd roared again, louder this time, as eyes darted to the offstage producers. A flicker of panic betrayed the facade. Nicholas stood firm, stare locked, daring a strike back. Words hung in the air, sharp and unyielding, as the audience's applause swelled like a tide crashing against a crumbling shore. For a moment, the polished mask slipped, revealing a cornered man. He forced a laugh, brittle and hollow, and leaned back in his chair, trying to project ease. "Good at playing the martyr, Nicholas," came the voice, laced with sarcasm. "But it won't change the facts. The career's a circus, and the main act is stumbling through one bad choice after another." The audience stirred, some booing softly, their loyalty shifting like sand under uncertain feet. Nicholas didn't move, stance rooted, a pillar of defiance in the storm of words. He tilted his head, studying the host like a scientist examining a failed experiment. "Keep talking about my choices," he said, calm but edged with steel, each syllable precise. "But let's talk about the choices made here. How guests are picked, how they're set up to fail, how words are twisted for a quick laugh. Think that's power? That's weakness." A low rumble of agreement ran through the crowd as his words struck a chord. He took a step closer, presence filling the space between them. "Came here to share a story, to talk about a film that means something." But it was turned into a trap, not a conversation, a fight. The host's face darkened, jaw tightening, suddenly rising from the safety of the desk. "A fight." The voice snapped, sharp enough to cut through the crowd's murmurs. The attack came first, swinging. This isn't above anyone. Exposure is needed because the little boxing movie is tanking, and that's a fact. Nicholas's eyes narrowed, voice steady, a quiet force heavier than the shouting. "The film's not tanking. It's honest. It's about a man who keeps fighting no matter the odds. Something impossible to understand for someone who's only ever fought for ratings." The audience erupted, cheers mixing with gasps as the host's face flushed deep red. Hands balled into fists, stepping closer, the air thick with tension. "Don't lecture about fighting," hissed the voice, low but venomous. "Everything earned through hard work. The notion of heroism doesn't come from making a movie. This is clinging to a dead career." The words were meant to crush, but Nicholas stood taller, gaze unflinching, a warrior facing a snarling beast. "Clinging to a dead career," he said softly, almost pitying. "Maybe, but still standing, still creating, still taking risks. Here, tearing others down doesn't make a career. It's a tantrum." The crowd roared, cheers shaking the room as composure shattered. A finger jabbed, voice trembling with rage. "No one gets to come here and speak like that." The outburst came, words tripping over each other. "This is the stage. These are the rules." Nicholas didn't flinch, smiled faint but defiant, a spark of triumph in his eyes. "The stage." The voice cut through like a blade through silk. "Then why is there fear of me?" The question landed like a thunderbolt, silencing the host for a heartbeat. The audience leaned forward, breathless, as the two stood inches apart, the air between them crackling with unspoken challenges. The studio itself seemed charged with raw energy. The space between them became a battlefield where words were weapons and silence a dare. Finger still hovering, face twisted with fury, the host's composure faltered under the question. "Fear." The voice spat, stepping closer, breath hot with defiance. "Not fear. Embarrassment for showing up, pretending relevance still exists when it's clear the act is a joke." The words were venomous, aimed to draw blood. But Nicholas's face remained steady, eyes burning with quiet, unyielding strength. Nicholas tilted his chin, voice low, each word carved with precision. "A joke," he said, tone carrying the weight of a man who had faced worse and survived. "I've been caught worse by better men than this." The crowd gasped, a ripple of shock and admiration. As Nicholas continued, his voice growing stronger like a fire catching wind. "Spent a lifetime telling stories, taking chances, bearing my soul. That's a joke. I call it courage, something rarely seen here." The insult landed, but the voice rose again, attempting to counter. "Courage. B-movies are courage, a walking meme, and oblivious to it." The audience stirred, some booing, their loyalty to Nicholas solidifying as cruelty lay bare. Nicholas took a measured step forward, closing the gap until they were nearly chest to chest, presence towering despite the host's height. "Talk about memes," he said, voice a controlled burn, each word searing. "Let's talk about hiding behind a desk, the jokes, the audience. thinking safety lies in laughter at barbs. Look at them now. He gestured to the crowd, erupting in cheers, a tidal wave crashing over faltering defenses. They see someone tearing down others because building anything themselves is impossible. The host's face paled, hands shaking, attempting to interrupt, but Nicholas pressed on relentlessly. Invited here to mock, yet expose instead. Smallness revealed, staggering back as if physically struck, the voice cracked in an attempt to rally. This is the stage, it shouted, but the words sounded hollow, desperate, a tantrum cast in sound. Nicholas didn't budge, gaze locked, unyielding. The stage, he said softly but piercing, cutting through the noise. Then why does it feel like control lies here? The audience roared, their cheers deafening as panic flickered across the host's face, glancing at frozen producers offstage, then back at Nicholas, standing like a statue, unshaken, unbreakable. A tinny came a hiss, voice weak, a dying ember compared to Nicholas's fire. Just a loud mouth out of tricks. Nicholas shook his head, a faint smile playing on his lips, not amusement, but pity. No, he said, voice steady, resonant, carrying to every corner. A man still fighting, still creating, still standing. The other side. Just noise. The crowd exploded, applause a thunderous wave as the host stood frozen, hands gripping the desk, the world unraveling. Nicholas turned as if to walk away, then paused, back to the host, tension a live wire ready to spark. The audience's roar still echoed like a victory cry, the pause heavy with expectation. Every eye locked on him, waiting for the next move. Hands gripped the desk. Face a mask of barely contained rage. A desperate attempt to reclaim control. Can't just walk away, came to shout, voice cracking. The rules of this stage humiliation isn't just left behind. The plea was raw, almost pitiful, but only fueled the crowd's fervor, their cheers swelling for Nicholas. He turned slowly, eyes blazing with quiet, unshakable resolve. Right, he said, voice steady, a calm sea after a storm. I could walk away, but I'm not here to run. I'm here to finish this. He stepped forward, presence commanding, a warrior claiming the battlefield, invited to tear down, to make a punchline. But one thing was forgotten. I don't break. The audience erupted. Applause, a deafening wave as Nicholas's words rang with the truth of a man who had faced countless battles and emerged stronger. Eyes darted wildly, searching for an escape. But there was none. Nicholas continued, voice rising, each word a hammer striking the final nail. Spent a lifetime fighting for art, for truth, taken risks, faced failure, and kept going. Meanwhile, hiding behind a desk, throwing stones at those braver than anyone watching will ever be. The host stumbled back, hands raised as if to ward off the words. That's enough, came the shout, but it was drowned by the crowd's cheers, their loyalty fully with Nicholas. The story can't be rewritten, the voice added, desperation clear. A man watching his empire crumble. Nicholas shook his head, smile, one of quiet triumph, not gloating, but certain. The stage, I don't need it. I've got my work, my passion, my fight. The need was yours, someone to mock, to feel big. But tonight, the wrong man was chosen. The crowd roared louder, some rising to their feet. Applause, a tidal wave of support. The host's face crumpled, shoulders sagging, sinking back against the desk. Defeated. Nicholas turned to the audience, gaze sweeping over them, warm and grateful. Thank you, he said, voice softening, but still resonant. Thank you for seeing me, for seeing the truth. Movies are made for those who believe in stories, in heart, in fighting on. The cheers grew deafening, a celebration of a man who had turned the tables, faced a bully, and won. He looked back one last time, eyes firm, but not cruel. I'm done here, he said, voice final, a door closing. The desk can stay. I've got work to do." With that, he walked off the stage, head held high, each step a declaration of victory. The audience leapt to their feet, ovation shaking the room as the host remained alone, head bowed, the weight of defeat etched into every line of the face. Cameras followed Nicolas as he disappeared into the wings, a hero who had faced fire and emerged unburned. The crowd's cheers carried him out, a testament to resilience, courage, an unbreakable spirit. Backstage, Nicolas paused, taking a deep breath, heart steady. He had come to share a story, and instead, he had reclaimed power, leaving the stage behind to face silence no longer his.